I'm currently live. So click on the free. If you can hear me, type 5 times 5 in the chat. And I'm online. I'll be back in a little bit. But I'll start the live stream of Crew-3.
Only 10 candidates passed all the tests. I was one of them. I was always fascinated by space and what does an astronaut actually do. So an astronaut works with a lot of engineering stuff. We do science in space. We work in international teams, and the adventure that we are able to live as astronauts in a combination of these 4 facts: engineering on the edge of what is possible, science, international teams, and adventure that's only possible as an astronaut. I want to say thank you to everyone who helped me to arrive at that point that I'm today. I will be thinking of you when I fly to space, and I send all my love to you down on the ground.
Back live inside the Dragon capsule as the crew goes through their various communication checks and suit checks.
as they prepare to have the hatch closed.
Awaiting that hatch closure. And by the way, if you would like to ask us a question, and by us, I mean Shannon, just pop on over to Twitter and use the hashtag AskNASA. That will send us the question. We'd love to have them. Shannon has been answering them throughout the show and doing a great job with it. We really appreciate her being here. And you've had some good questions as well. Even the patch, which I know you're big into your crew patch, Shannon.
Of course. I like our crew patch. I think it's pretty good looking.
You know, it's hard to deny. I love the blue. I love the dragon. But the Crew-3 patch is pretty cool as well. The logo was designed for this mission by the astronauts themselves, just as you did, Shannon. They say that the capsule flies upward while the flames below honor the thousands of workers who worked on Crew-3. The number 3 is prominent in the shape of the exhaust below and is next to a dragon. And the highlighted stars represent Crew-3, as you can see there, and the 4 red planets, they represent humanity's dream to explore Mars. A beautiful patch there.
Oh, it is a lovely patch. It is very well crafted.
You work with the artist that puts it together?
Yes, so each crew can either design it themselves or they have a choice to work with an artist. And so the crews are trying to take elements of what they feel really represents their flight and put it into a patch.
And I imagine, has anybody like drawn one themselves?
Oh, sure.
Oh, how about that? Especially the artist, you know, Nicole Stott, former shuttle astronaut.
Yes.
She's an artist.
She's definitely an artist. I love her work.
As you can see them preparing for the hatch closure, it looks like they are documenting the seal around the hatch.
Yes, they will. They're looking very carefully to make sure that that seal is completely intact because that's what's going to hold the pressure inside the capsule.
You don't want any foreign object debris, what we know here at NASA as FOD.
It's FOD, right?
Which is anything that's not supposed to be there?
Anything that's not supposed to be there. And it can be, they're looking for really tiny things. Something as small as a human hair will cause that seal to not operate properly.
And they're using, it appears to be smartphones to take these pictures.
They do. I mean, the cameras on the phones are so good these days that you can take some pictures and blow them up and really get a good view of what that hatch seal looks like.
They are good cameras indeed. Flying just before the last flight of the Crew Dragon, I should say, was the crew from Inspiration 4. And our NASA social team was putting together our page for this launch from the Kennedy Space Center. And they, as you can see, the hatch being closed right there. They're going to push on that to make sure it seals up really good.
They're going to push on it because the hatch itself, if it's not locked, it wants to spring open. So you've got to overcome that force to get the latches to latch on that hatch.
And so we'll hold the thought on the NASA social video as we look. Looks like the crew closeout number 36 was putting a fair amount of force.
Yes, it did look like he was pushing hard, but that's good. We'll get that hatch closed.
And now begins the process of them sealing it up.
Sealing it up and doing all kinds of checks and cross checks. Because they'll seal it up, there'll be a pressure check to make sure the pressure does in fact hold inside the capsule. And you'll see teams of people here working together to make sure every step is done exactly so.
Carefully and methodically working their way. 255 feet up in the air, we might add, in the white room. As they work on closing up that hatch, let's head out to California and catch up with John I for an update on the operations. John?
Countdown is proceeding nominally at this point, and thanks, Daryl, for that handoff. We're coming up just inside T-minus 2 hours. Now, on board the brand new Dragon spacecraft Endurance, we've heard a lot of the communication between the crew and the ground. Comm checks were complete. We saw the astronaut seats rotated to the flight position. The suit leak checks were successfully completed, and we've been watching the closeout leads lean into that hatch, getting it secure, and we're getting ready now to begin what will be the hatch leak checks to make sure that all the seals are good, everything's bolted down tight, ready to go. Once we finish the final leak checks, the team will begin the steps to close out the white room and get the access arm ready to retract. And then that closeout team that you see there will leave the pad by about T-minus 1 hour. And that'll leave just the 4 astronauts on the pad. Now for Falcon 9, their team for countdown is on console. Here you can see firing room 4. They're preparing for communication checks with the astronauts coming up in just a few minutes. Currently on Falcon 9, the engineers have pressurized launch vehicle gas storage bottles. That was done before we cleared the pad. These are composite overwrapped pressure vessels. They hold gases that are used to fill the propellant tanks with hot helium as that propellant is pulled out of the first and second stages by the Merlin turbopumps. As we get into the last half hour of the countdown, we'll do a final top off of those pressure vessels, make sure that we're at flight load. We also use these pressurized gases to spin the Merlin engine turbopump when we have to start an engine in space. So the second stage MVAC engine has to start up after the first stage separates. And the first stage engines, we've got 3 of them need to restart to begin the entry, and then 1 engine for the final landing sequence. So all of those engines need the helium gas to be able to spin and start the engines. The gases are also used for attitude control systems. Not so much on the way up, but it helps orient the vehicle after the first stage separates and comes back down for the landing on the drone ship. And we also use the gas to deploy the grid fins and to kick the landing legs out just before we land on the drone ship. We're continuing to monitor weather at the launch site and around the world at contingency abort and landing zones. Concerns we're looking at continue to be the same too since we started the webcast. Cumulus clouds and flight through precipitation. Now, a moment ago, the range did report that currently right now we are no-go on weather for flying through precipitation, but they also expect that to clear up and for us to be go when we get to launch. So this is just a temporary. They have to tell us when we're not meeting all of the weather rules, but right now it doesn't look like a concern. So the good news is weather's looking good. Dragon's right on time. Falcon 9 is quiet, getting ready for its big events coming up here in another hour or so. And so with that, we're going to hand it back to the team at Kennedy.
All right, thank you, John. And yes, indeed, we can confirm there was some weather that came through here.
Yes, there was.
It was a little bit of rain, a light storm, our launch weather officer tells us, Ryan Sizik, informing us that it was a light one. It was passing through, but in fact, when it's here, it does cause that to go red.
Exactly. If it's raining here, we would probably not launch into it. Thankfully, there is no lightning, which is another criteria that we use to determine whether or not we are go for launch.
We're back inside the capsule now. We're awaiting a couple of things. They're going to do some comm checks. They're going to do some suit leak checks. And in fact, I think you were able to eye when that happens. The suit leak check, do they?
Oh, the suit leak checks. Yeah, you can tell when they are doing a leak checks. I believe they've already occurred, but one of the things that happens is you have your visors closed, all your zippers zipped up, and they will pressurize the suit. So you'll get extra air volume inside your suit, so the suits will kind of puff up. You can see that when the leak check happens.
And now the half-down visor look is
it's very fashionable.
The look of the day. In this moment, as they wait, what is that like? Because, I mean, they're waiting to go to space, launching on a rocket.
Yes, they know they've got just under 2 hours to wait. So a couple of things are going on. Of course, each crew member there is thinking about their role during the launch. They're probably chit-chatting a little bit amongst themselves, trying to stay comfortable in those suits, and probably just trying to enjoy the experience of actually being in their
Dragon
spacecraft.
SpaceX, we will be commencing health checks for the launch escape system. Expect momentary flight computer state change, followed by a transition back to pad hatch closed.
Endurance copies.
That's a call out to check the health of the emergency escape system.
Yes, this is what's primarily happening in those last hours before launch. Is the SpaceX team is checking all the systems on the spacecraft to make sure everything is working properly. And of course, the launch escape system is one of the main systems that we need to work properly during a launch.
Especially with that hatch closed.
Yes, exactly.
So we've got about an hour now until the pad team wraps up the final checks and clears the white room, and that's when the action will pick up with the crew access arm retracting. We'll have the arming of the launch escape system, as we just mentioned, and then prop loading will follow. So we'll keep a live view of the crew here as they're sitting tight for the next hour or so and provide you with some more context about this mission. But for now, let's head over to Houston for a closer look at what the crew will be doing when they reach their destination. Sandra.
Thanks, Daryl. Once Crew Dragon arrives at the International Space Station, they'll be welcomed by their Expedition 66 crewmates. Since the Crew-2 astronauts splashed down Monday evening off the coast of Pensacola, Florida, we're doing something called an indirect handover, which just means a new crew of astronauts arrives at station after another crew departs. This mission will also continue keeping the long-duration crew size on station at 7. On the U.S. side, we'll have 4 astronauts to conduct research until NASA astronaut Mark Vande Hei returns to Earth in March of next year. That jump from 3 to 4 astronauts takes our average of 30 to 40 hours of science work a week on station, all the way up to sometimes 80 to 100 hours, effectively doubling our amount of time dedicated to research. As the station is first and foremost a laboratory, the crew will jump right into conducting experiments with new research still to be delivered on upcoming cargo flights, including another SpaceX Dragon scheduled right now in December. I'll toss it over to Marie now, where we will learn more about some of the exciting science on the horizon for Crew-3. Marie?
All right, thank you so much, Sandra. I am here with Dr. Hector Gutierrez. You're a professor of mechanical and aerospace engineering at the Florida Institute of Technology down the road in Orlando. And you actually have an experiment launching aboard Crew-3 tonight.
That's right, Mary. Thanks again for the opportunity of being here. Very excited to be here to the launch of our flight units. Our experiment is called the Smartphone Video Guidance System. The name is a little bit misleading because we're actually not using any smartphones. But this is technology that was originally developed by NASA Marshall for guidance of a spacecraft and proximity maneuvers. And we're finally going to, after several years of working on the deployment of SVGS, we are going to have the opportunity to deploy it on the robot on the space station, which is called Astrobi. So the smartphone guidance system is essentially a software sensor. So it's an algorithm that can be deployed using the hardware resources of a robot, a CPU, camera, and in this case, that will be the resources of Astrobi.
Okay, and so there's the actual payload is a small beacon. It's about, you told me it's about the size of a flashlight. I think we have a couple of photos of it. But this beacon, there it is. It attaches to the wall of the International Space Station, and it has some LED lights that light up, and then that gets used in combination with the sensor to maneuver the Astrobi that you mentioned. That's the free-flying robot on the International Space Station. There are actually 3 of them, and you're going to test 5 different maneuvers with 1, 2, and even all 3 of the Astrobi robots at the same time. Is that right?
That's exactly right. So these beacons will be attached, some of them to the wall or some of them to the payload compartment on the Astrobis, and they essentially will be used as navigation beacons to execute a number of formation flight maneuvers and to demonstrate capabilities of SVGS and its accuracy.
So how can you use this technology if these maneuvers are successful, if they do what you expect them to do, what you hope they will do? How can you apply this technology in space and to help improve our lives here on Earth?
So the expectation is we have many potential applications for SVGS in the space context. Right now we're working with Marshall on a landing mission in which one of the possible applications of SVGS in space is to serve as beacon for planetary landings. As you probably realize, every time that a probe or a robot is dropped in a planet, one of the biggest issues is how to know accurately where it lands. So planetary landing is a big challenge, and SVGS is one of the potential technologies that could be used for that. But besides that, SVGS can be used for formation flight of a small spacecraft. One of the trends in the future of space exploration also includes that instead of launching large spacecraft, it is much more cost-effective and robust to launch a cluster of items that then need to be oriented relative to each other at a relatively short distance. So SVGS is a strong candidate to fulfill that role. But so within space applications, the potential uses of SVGS are for proximity maneuvers, formation flight, landing. But besides that, we're very excited that SBGS can also be used on Earth for similar applications where you need robots to cooperate between each other to dock or land, if it's a drone, for example. Picture in the not too far future, you can put your beacon at your doorstep and a delivery drone will drop the package right where the beacon is. You know? And it can save significant effort to a delivery person who has to go up three flights of stairs or something like that. You know?
Just have the drone drop it off.
Picture it in New York. So there are a number of applications. We want to go into a commercial, explore the commercial possibilities of developing a commercial version of SBGS that can be integrated with robotic platforms and drones.
All right, Dr. Hector Gutierrez, thank you so much. Best of luck with the smartphone video guidance sensor experiment on Crew-3, and we'll be watching and following along, and enjoy the launch.
Thank you very much. A pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. You too. Daryl, we'll send it back to you.
All right, Marie, thank you. Here's a closer look now at some of the life-changing science astronauts are performing aboard the International Space Station.
The International Space Station is a state-of-the-art microgravity laboratory that is unlocking discoveries not possible on Earth and helping us push farther into deep space.
Every single day, we are answering big questions about Earth and about space, about where we came from and about where we're going. But the other thing that we're doing is we're learning more questions to ask.
Microgravity turns almost everything we know upside down. Liquids behave completely differently. Fire burns in new ways. Biological systems reveal surprises.
There's a few things that have made me gasp out loud up on board Space Station. Watching heart cells actually beat has been a pretty big one.
We're studying ways to grow food in microgravity.
I got to tell you, these are pretty amazing.
We're learning how human bodies react to life in space, and how to keep crew members safe and strong on long-duration exploration missions.
Deadlifts are awesome on Earth. They're also awesome in zero gravity.
We're testing technologies that will be critical to our return to the Moon and Great Leap to Mars. Our research has contributed to medical and social benefits on our home planet, allowing us to find new ways to combat disease back on Earth and develop technologies to deliver clean water to remote communities in need. The spectacular vantage point of more than 200 miles above our planet supports our monitoring of Earth's climate, natural disasters, and plant life.
Our planet Earth is absolutely stunning. To me, it doesn't matter where we are in the world, I just see beauty in different ways.
The growing new space economy, so vital to our continued progress in space, is flourishing in low Earth orbit. We're inspiring future generations from a platform that is one of the largest international collaborations of our time. We're doing science at 17,500 miles per hour. Come along for the ride.
And Shannon, you were a part of that ride, doing that science at 17,500 miles an hour.
Yes, I was.
And it looks like they're going to have a busy time up there.
I think so. There's so much science to be done. The ground crews do a very good job of keeping the crew on board scheduled the entire day doing that science.
Taking advantage of every moment. As we look live inside the Dragon capsule, we are T-minus 1 hour and 44 minutes until liftoff. We are here with Shannon Walker, NASA astronaut who flew on Crew-1, watching Crew-3 prepare to get ready for their flight. And it appears they haven't been very chatty.
No, they haven't been very chatty. I guess it's a quiet crew.
It's a quiet crew, and that's just fine as they prepare for their liftoff. Crew-3 is scheduled to arrive to station just days after astronauts from Crew-2 returned home from a record-setting space flight. Take a look at this at 10:33 p.m. Eastern Time. The view looks a little similar. This is Crew-2, though, safely splashing down in the Gulf off the coast of Pensacola. There's a view from the infrared camera as the parachutes opened up. The crew of Shane Kimbrough, Megan MacArthur, JAXA astronaut Aki Hoshide, and ESA astronaut Thomas Pesquet, they landed safely, splashing down there in the Gulf as the parachutes came down around them. They spent 199 days in orbit, Shannon, surpassing the previous record of 168 days set by Crew-1 astronauts, of which you were a part.
I was. I would have loved to have stayed up 199 days, but 168 is not bad either.
And before they returned to Earth, NASA astronauts Shane Kimbrough and Megan MacArthur, well, they were good tenants because they made sure that station was ready for Crew-3. I had a chance to speak with them in space before they came home. Hey, Shane and Megan, great to be with you today. This is fantastic. You guys are currently over the Pacific Ocean, cruising at 17,500 miles per hour towards our general direction, though it doesn't look like you're going that fast. And Megan, your hair is looking luxurious, by the way.
Thank you very much.
So tell me, you're getting ready for Crew-3 to arrive.
Yeah, so we've been getting their sleep stations ready to go, their crew quarters. So we've been cleaning those and getting them all ready. So they're going to be set. We also have gotten their suitcases up here. And we got one, here's Raja's. And we got Kayla's there. And so we got Tom's and Matthias's as well. So all your clothes are ready to go for the next 6 months. So that's going to be set. All your food's ready to go as well.
And given the size of those suitcases, it doesn't look like the wardrobe is having a lot of variety. But you don't need a lot of that up in space. Tell me, for the first space flight, you know, for the folks that are coming up, 3 of the 4 astronauts, this is going to be their first space flights. For those 3 astronauts, we know they've trained extensively, but what is something as a first-timer they will experience that you just can't train for?
Well, Daryl, that's a great question. And really, it's the physical environment that we live in that is really hard, obviously, to train for when you live in 1G on Earth. And so it's how you move around, how you move efficiently, how you can, you know, go floating and flying through the space station without crashing into things, without knocking things off the walls. But these are all smart folks. They're going to figure it out really quick, and they're going to be doing great work up here before we know it.
Hey, Shane, one of the veteran astronauts, Thomas Marshburn, you know him pretty well. You got any stories about him? He's a veteran astronaut, just like you, flew on shuttle, been up to the station before, and both of you the astronaut class of 2004. So you got any good stories about Tom?
Nah, none really. Tom's such a great guy. I mean, he was at NASA before we were selected as astronauts as a flight surgeon. So some folks may not know that. So he was kind of the go-to person in our class of, hey, what's it really like? I don't understand this, how NASA runs. And since he'd been here a little while, he was definitely our go-to person for that. Tom and I are also both from Atlanta, so we have that in common. And we've enjoyed working together and training together over these many years.
Couple of Southern guys. That's great. Want to ask you, though, currently Crew-3, as they're getting ready to go up, I was watching you guys play a game. In fact, the entire world was watching you guys play a game with your thumbs. And I'm just curious, what was that game? And why were you playing it?
So that is actually a French game that our ESA crewmate, Thomas Pesquet, taught us. It's called the Game of Thumbs, so very original title. And we're basically playing it to pass the time. So we were, you know, you have a lot of time when you're sitting in the vehicle. And we had, during that launch week, you know, you have some practice runs as well. And so you have a lot of time sitting in the vehicle while the vehicle is getting fueled. And of course, you know, we talk to each other about what, you know, to be prepared for any emergency scenario that might happen. We talk through all of our nominal tasks and monitoring that we're going to do, and then we still have some extra time. And so Thomas had this game at the ready for us to play, and that kept us entertained for the time between the activities that we had to do.
Shane Kimbrough and Megan MacArthur aboard the International Space Station, thank you so much. And by the way, fun fact, during this interview, you just traveled 3,000 miles. Incredible.
Thanks, Daryl. Really great talking to you, and get Crew-3 up here safely. We're looking forward to having them on board.
Will do. Take care.
Okay, yeah, yeah. I think hiccups. What about good? See ya.
to make sure that they are prepared when launch actually happens.
Shane and Megan back on the ground. Shannon, you were out there when they came down, and you were one of the first people they saw?
I was. It's hard to believe it was just Monday night when they splashed down, but it was pretty special for me to be out on the ship that gathered up the capsule, and I got to see the crew, and it was extra special because I was on station when they came on board, and then I got to be there when they splashed down.
How about that? That must have brought a smile to their faces even after, coming back from space.
Yes, they all told me that it was great to see my friendly face.
Great story, Shannon. Thank you so much. And now let's check back in on launch operations in Hawthorne. John I, what has the team at SpaceX been working on?
Thanks, Daryl. We're coming up on just under 1 hour and 38 minutes before launch. Now the crew of 4 are in the capsule. Hatches closed, and we have heard a successful completion of the hatch leak check. So pretty much everything is finished with the capsule. The ground team will be securing the white room, the access arm, and they'll be off of the pad in just about a little more than 30 minutes. Now the launch engineers for Falcon 9 are in their firing room 4 in the NASA Launch Control Center. That's just outside the Vehicle Assembly Building at Kennedy Space Center. You can see the view they're going to have through those large windows of Pad 39A. It's 5 kilometers just east of them. We get liftoff, it's going to light up the sky, and I think everybody's going to be looking out those windows. Now the Falcon 9 team has loaded the helium and nitrogen gas into the storage bottles on the launch vehicle. We've done some RF checkouts a little bit earlier this evening, and we're doing a final review of vehicle tests that were performed earlier today. Now the SpaceX chief engineer will be checking with the team at T-minus 80 minutes to verify that we are good to continue the countdown. Now the next major activity is flowing a small amount of fuel into the first stage to prime the Merlin 1D engines for ignition. Now the team's also monitoring fuel and liquid oxygen loading preparations. We're ensuring that the propellants that are in the ground storage tanks are correctly chilled before we load those into the Falcon 9, beginning at T-minus 35 minutes. Now for the range and the weather, the range continues to be go. We are continuing to release balloons. We have been getting balloon data back from the upper altitudes. Everything looks good. And more importantly, the weather has gone green again. They said it would be just a short period. We were red for precipitation. That has cleared up, and weather says that we should be clear the rest of the way through the countdown. So with that, everything is a go. We'll turn it over to Courtney here at Hawthorne.
Thanks, John. The Draco spacecraft you see on your screen is capable of carrying up to 7 passengers to and from Earth's orbit and beyond. And what we have sitting right here in front of us is a Draco engine, which helps get Dragon from one place to the next. And we're really excited to share some details about this engine. But first, let's take a closer look at the overall Dragon vehicle.
Yeah, Courtney, just to get an idea for size, this is our Dragon vehicle, and from the bottom to the top of the vehicle, it's about 8 meters or about 27 feet tall and about 4 meters in diameter or 13 feet in diameter. The bottom portion of it is called the trunk, and this is the unpressurized portion of the vehicle, whereas the top portion here is the Dragon capsule, and this is the pressurized section. This black portion on the trunk here is actually a bunch of solar panels, and that helps power the vehicle while it's on the pad and while it's in flight, as well as while it's attached to the International Space Station. And we also have 16 Draco thrusters on the vehicle that help maneuver it around, and 8 Super Draco thrusters to help in case of emergency for a launch escape system.
It is the only spacecraft currently flying that is capable of returning significant amounts of cargo to Earth from the International Space Station, and it's the first private spacecraft to take humans to the space station. In order to make this journey, Dragon is equipped with 16 Draco thrusters, which are used to maneuver the spacecraft during the mission. And today we actually have some flight-proven thrusters to show viewers. Each were flown on the first version of our Dragon vehicle, and we have one right here.
Yeah, Courtney, I think this is so cool that we have this in front of us. This specific Draco engine has actually flown twice, and that's been on CRS-9 in 2016 and CRS-15 back in 2018 on the first version of our Dragon vehicle. And reusability is so important to us, so it's really great to see a vehicle or a thruster right in front of us that has proven that it can refly in this design. Each thruster is capable of generating 90 pounds of force in the vacuum of space. And the earlier cargo version of Dragon fired its thrusters more than 450,000 times, and that's between missions and testing. An interesting fact about the Draco engines is that they can serve different functions based on their positions on the spacecraft. So if you can see on the vehicle, you know, depending on what orientation we need to maneuver the vehicle, there are thrusters that are oriented differently so that we can make those maneuvers.
Yeah, well, thank you for your demonstration. That was great. And I just want to be sure everyone knows not to be confused with the Super Draco thrusters. We're coming up on the Launch Escape System health checks. The Launch Escape System is the automated system in place that can fire the 8 Super Draco thrusters on Dragon to quickly separate the crew from the rocket, either on the pad or during the ride uphill. While we wait on those Launch Escape System health checks, let's check back in with our team at Kennedy Space Center. Daryl.
All right, thank you, Courtney, and a great show and tell there with I enjoyed that. I thought that was kind of neat. Yeah. We're currently T-minus 1 hour and 32 minutes and counting until liftoff, and until Crew Dragon flies its next 4-person crew to the International Space Station. They'll, of course, have the astronauts inside the spacecraft. You're looking live down the crew access arm at the capsule on top of that Falcon 9 rocket there. Inside the spacecraft, Commander Raja Chari, pilot Tom Marshburn, and mission specialist Kayla Barron and Matthias Maurer. We've had some progress since we had John's update. Some of that progress we've seen so far, Shannon, why don't you outline some of that for us?
Well, so what we've done, you can see there that the closeout crew is still working on closing out the hatch. That does take a while, longer than one might expect. But again, I want to make sure that everything is done just so that hatch will hold its pressure. Before the hatch closure, we had the suit leak check, so we want those space suits to work properly should we need them in an emergency. And they've done some other systems checks to get ready for the all-important arming of the launch escape system.
Absolutely. We saw a shot there of the crew, or the closeout crew. They were tethered, as you can see there. Both the crew member on the left and the right, you can see those tethers because they're literally 255 feet up in the air.
They are, and there's a little space there that we do not want them to fall through. So
absolutely,
that's why we keep them tethered.
And it looks like a step ladder there, in case they need to get up a little higher.
Boost up. Right, exactly.
It's good to have the right tools on hand. Here in just a few seconds, around an hour and 30 minutes before liftoff in our launch timeline, we should have that launch escape system and communication checks conducted by the Falcon launch team. These checkouts, as Shannon mentioned, they're standard part of the launch countdown. Of course, it's critical to make sure everything is working in order before arming this launch escape system. We'll get this call out in just a few seconds.
Yeah, it looks like the closeout crew is finishing up. Hopefully all is good, checking out with that hatch there. And as soon as they probably back away and leave, we will hear the arming of the launch escape system. But I tell you, if there's still work to do, they will sit there and keep working until that hatch is adequately closed and we know that it will hold pressure.
What does it sound like as you're sitting there in the seat and they're working on it from the outside?
Yeah, you kind of hear some thumping and bumping going on, and you do have those 2 windows in front, so you can kind of see a little bit what's happening, but mostly you really don't know exactly what they're doing. You just know that they are working on it and getting that much closer to launch. Looks like we're going to need to check something out a little bit taller, higher up on the capsule there.
Well, that step ladder came in handy.
Yeah, it sure did.
Not sure what that was.
I am not sure what that was either, but it looked like it was a duct to flow air or something to the spacecraft. Clearly it did not need to be there for the launch, and so they spent the time needed to remove it.
It did look like some ducting.
Yes.
As they continue to work here. And as you mentioned, they will take the time necessary to make sure everything is secure.
Absolutely right. And everybody knows what the timeline milestones are, so they have a very good idea of when they need to finish up this activity. They're not going to rush through it by any stretch of the imagination. They're going to do it very methodically, very carefully, but we do have a timeline because, as was mentioned previously, it is an instantaneous launch window. We need to launch exactly on time.
That instantaneous window needed to rendezvous with the International Space Station on time.
Exactly. But
in this schedule, they're aware, as you said, of where they have some flexibility.
Right. So nothing is timelined so so tightly that we don't have a little bit of padding to take care of problems. Now, I don't know if they've got a problem they're addressing or if they're just doing the normal work, because I was not a member of the closeout team, so I don't know all of what they are doing, but they do have a good sense of when that work needs to be finished.
You were on the other side, inside the capsule for Crew-1. It does appear that the closeout crew member is now documenting with the camera phone.
Right, again.
All of the area around that capsule.
Yep.
You can see some of the closeout crew making their way out of the white room and down the crew access arm.
That's a very good sign. So looks like they are definitely finishing up their work, and soon, hopefully, we will hear that the launch escape system is armed.
We're expecting that in just a few seconds, really any moment now. But he's got the light and the camera, still working that.
Yep, they're taking one last look to make sure that there is nothing trapped in that hatchway and that would inhibit the seals from working properly. It's interesting watching them work, don't you think?
Yes, it is. It's very thorough. I appreciate that.
Yes, very thorough. They'll have a set of procedures. I don't know if we've seen it, but the closeout crew will have tablets with them, and they will have on the tablets every step that they need to do.
And they'll also have those pictures that accompany each and every step that they took. So if they need to, for any reason,
to go
back and look at it.
Yep, exactly so.
This is, we should note, a brand new Dragon capsule.
It is. They get to ride in a new Dragon. That's exciting.
The booster.
The booster is a refurbished one, so it is not making its first flight.
Flew on CRS-22, landed back, was refurbished and
ready for use.
Unfortunately, there may be hiccups in the control.
There you see a nice shot on the pad against the dark sky.
Hopefully no more rain clouds on the way. Sounds like we have to go with the weather, so that is very good news.
That's what we heard. Our launch weather officer here at the Kennedy Space Center, Brian Cizik, telling us that that has cleared out. John I reporting earlier that the range went from red when we had the little shower.
Yes, we got rained on.
Yeah, even a few drops on the lens you can see have, you know, still hanging around. Evidence that we had a little rain out there on the pad. You can see the ground is wet as well, the reflection of the lights off the ground and the droplets on the lens. But that has since moved out of the area, which is great news. And then the range went green for weather.
You can see from that view there, it looks like there's a lot of fog at the launch pad.
It does look that way.
But fog will not stop us from launching.
No, it won't. Neither will the thin clouds that we've had in the area. It was explained to me by our launch weather officer that we've got some onshore flow that basically a high pressure system north of us that's spinning and throwing that moisture from off the ocean, off the Atlantic Ocean, over the Kennedy Space Center. But there's a layer of dry air in the mid-levels of the atmosphere that has soaked up a fair amount of that moisture, and it is essentially drying it out. serving as kind of a a blow dryer effect.
a blow dryer for Florida.
Well, the 4 Crew-2 astronauts not only broke a record for the longest stay for a commercial spaceflight at 199 days, they also got a lot of science done. Let's take a look at that now.
Everything we're doing up in space is to benefit humanity or benefit human exploration.
We are natural explorers. We want to explore our environment. Whatever small area we start in, we always want to push the boundaries.
The great thing about space travel is the perspective that it gives you.
I feel a sense of pride getting up there, but at the same time, I want a lot of people to experience the same experience.
Dragon, SpaceX, go for launch.
3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
I've got my symptom, my I think space is on the
Dragon, SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
You are part of this big team. You are part of an effort that is larger than yourself.
It is a cool perspective to see from up there that, wow, this whole planet looks pretty special.
Dragon separation visually confirmed.
Just flying a few hundred kilometers away from the Earth changes everything.
Endeavour, on behalf of SpaceX, welcome home to planet Earth.
Welcome home to planet Earth, and welcome to the Kennedy Space Center if you're just joining us for the launch coverage of Crew-3 as we await liftoff just an hour and 21 minutes from now. Crew-2 that you just saw splash down in the Gulf off the coast of Pensacola on Monday after a very eventful yet productive stay, 6 months in space. Shannon, it looked to me from the infrared video that they had pretty calm waters, and you were out there, you experienced a similar.
Yes, you definitely want calm waters when you splash down in the water because you really don't want that capsule rocking too much. That's going to make the crew feel badly if they have too much motion.
You don't want to be bouncing around in the seas, whether it's in a boat or a space capsule.
No, it's
same
not
effect.
Good. Not good.
It's not good. Well, NASA leaders are watching this launch from right here at the Kennedy Space Center. They're watching the astronauts inside Crew Dragon Endurance with great anticipation. NASA's Marie Lewis is with a special guest right now from ESA at OSB-2. Marie.
That's right, Daryl. I'm here with ESA astronaut and geophysicist Alex Gerst, two-time flyer to space on the Russian Soyuz. Alex, thanks for being here.
Hey, Marie, good to be here. And it's finally good to see the stars come out.
Yeah.
I believe I can talk at split. I still got my hiccups under control. So, yeah. Today's Crew-3, yeah. I'm watching this for the ISM. I feel proud. For some reason, I think it's going way too fast. Maybe that my eyes are slower than usual, or they're just doing so much frames that I can't understand it. So this launch, I can't wait. It's an absolute dream. If you want to ask me any questions on Twitter or in the chat, do #NextCrewTISS here on the YouTube chat or on Twitter. Ask me anything. Ask me anything. So, yep. Do #NextCrewTISS and I'll be shouting you out.
down here on Earth. That's why we have to fly up there to do all that science experiments. But it also includes training, like how to live on the space station, right? How you get your bearings, and how to translate. That's what we call like floating from one end of the space station to the other. How to sleep in space, how to go to the toilet, all things that you need to figure out on the first day, right?
Yeah.
And you can't train them, so that's really a challenge. And you just, people say they drink from a fire hose up there, right? The first 3 days.
Yeah, and you mentioned science. I want to talk a little bit about the science that Matthias is going to be working on. 35 different experiments specific to ESA. Can you touch on some of the experiments Matthias will be doing?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that they do up there. That's actually a long continuation of experiments that have been done in the past. Actually, some that I already did, he's continuing. He's a materials scientist, so he's really good at those things, looking at new materials down here. I mean, they do the experiments up there, but the use of the experiments is down here for like turbo engines that use less fuel, or lighter materials. That's important. But also like cell experiments on cell aging, also experiments that help people who have muscular diseases down here. A really nice set of experiments. They actually have a bioprinter for skin cells up there. Really interesting, that they can put over wounds if they have them.
That's fantastic. Alex, thank you so much. We're out of time, so I'm going to send it back over to Jesse and Hawthorne, but thank you so much for being here, Alex.
You're very welcome.
Jesse, over to you.
Thanks, Marie. It's T-minus 1 hour and about 17 minutes from launch, and it always gets more and more exciting as we continue to get closer to that T0. Now, Crew has already ingressed the vehicle. They have been helped out by our closeout team to get into their seats and get buckled in, attach their umbilicals to the spacecraft, which provide breathing air and comms to Dragon. And then they've completed comm checks and suit leak checks, and those comm checks were completed with the core here.
Endurance copies.
All right, and confirmation that the closeout team is now departing. So after those suit leak checks, the closeout team was able to close and seal the hatch, which also gets its own leak check. As we just heard, the closeout team has departed, and those final weather checks are coming up, which will be necessary before that final go, no-go is given for launch.
Yeah, before we get that final go, no-go, the various teams at both NASA and SpaceX will do an internal go poll, making sure conditions are right with Falcon 9, the Dragon, the Crew, the range, and the space station before the final go is given. Now let's check back in on Houston for a status on the team supporting the space station on their readiness for launch. Sandra, how's it going?
Thanks, Jesse. The team here in Mission Control Houston remains go for launch. All systems on board the station that are required to be healthy for this mission are continuing to look good. Before the station team is go for launch, they must verify that key systems on board the station are functioning as expected. This includes life support systems like oxygen generation, carbon dioxide removal, and the water recycling system that allows us to reuse about 90% of the water we send to station.
Okay. So I thought, why not give an extra view? And okay, I'm gonna put up since Lab Hydrate has a new view of the board. I thought, like, wait, don't die. But not realize it's not where it's gonna be landing. So, is the NASA live stream the same as the SpaceX live stream? I'll be right back.
Most of the journey. So, I'll send it back to Hawthorne. The International Space Station team is ready for launch. Courtney?
Thanks, Sandra. We're so happy to hear that the space station team is ready for launch. As we mentioned, the Crew-3 astronauts will spend about 6 months aboard the International Space Station. They're starting their journey after the departure of the Crew-2 astronauts from the space station. Crew-2 splashed down off the Florida coast Monday night, where they were picked up at sea by SpaceX's Go Navigator recovery vessel. Next, SpaceX will launch Commercial Resupply Mission 24, or CRS-24, to space station to deliver cargo and supplies to Crew-3 and the astronauts and cosmonauts aboard. It will automatically dock to the International Docking Adapter 3 on the space-facing port of the station's Harmony module.
Before Crew-3 returns home, they will hand the baton to the next crew to
Oh,
arrive at
that's
the
the same.
orbiting lab.
Okay,
on
I'll
Crew
be
Dragon,
back later.
the Crew-4 crew. That mission is targeted to launch in April of next year, and it will carry Crew Dragon commander and NASA astronaut Kjell Lindgren, pilot Bob Hines of NASA, and mission specialist Samantha Cristoforetti of the European Space Agency, or ESA, and a fourth crew member who has yet to be named. The Crew-4 astronauts will also complete a 6-month mission as expedition crew members aboard the space station. Now, they will be joined there by 3 additional crewmates who will launch on a Russian Soyuz spacecraft, and this will mean that 7 people will be on the space station at one time, allowing NASA to increase the amount of science conducted in space.
That's right, and this will be Kjell Lindgren's second trip into space following a 141-day stay at the space station in 2015 for expeditions 44 and 45. Before being selected as an astronaut in 2009, he was a flight surgeon supporting space shuttle and space station missions. In December 2020, NASA named him as one of the Artemis team of astronauts helping to pave the way for NASA's upcoming lunar missions.
Bob Hines, a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Air Force, was selected as an astronaut in 2017 and will be making his first trip into space on Crew-4. Before becoming an astronaut, he supported multiple military deployments in the Middle East, Africa, and Europe, served as a flight test pilot for the Federal Aviation Administration, and flew as a research pilot at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston.
And ESA astronaut Samantha Cristoforetti will be making her second trip to space as a mission specialist on Crew-4. She was selected as an ESA astronaut in 2009 and flew to the International Space Station in 2014 aboard a Russian Soyuz for a long-duration mission as part of Expedition 42 and 43. Cristoforetti is planned to take over as station commander for Expedition 60.
Ooh, they're talking about Crew-4. So Crew-4 is well, it's the next one going to space. I will not use the same hashtag. I really won't. If I do, Crew-3. Okay. So, actually, there's 2 people there. Is Shannon Walker. I think that was Crew-1. And that's the person I regularly see. That's the person that the man. I think it was the person I saw on Lucy. I think so, but I'm not sure. No, wait, he was. He was just wearing different clothes, not to look like an astronaut. But, okay, so now I see why the space community is angry that NASA can't even provide a simple 1080p. That's so simple. Like, they have billions of dollars, and they can't reach that, and I only have nothing. And I can do this. Like, seriously, NASA, what has went wrong with you? So, yeah. That's why the space community is really angry that NASA can't provide a simple 1080p. End of story, blah, 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 blah. Have a good rest of your day. And I will not be stuck ending, but then the live stream would just, So the next milestone we are currently waiting for is go for launch. I am honestly really tired. I want to press a green button. So I'm going to go to the SpaceX website and see the events. So here's that SpaceX.com/launches. Please work. Okay. So, yep. So what's currently happening? Let's see the countdown. Okay, so when will they call go? That's what I'm looking for. When will they call go? Okay, go for the parent load is at 45 minutes. So I want to go for launch. I think they said that already. I think. Oh, come on, I'm stuck. So I do not know. What? I think there's something wrong. Right? Please. It's frozen. Refresh. Better. Did I break it again? Refresh. Good. Good. Oh, come on. What website are we to? Launches. Last time I checked. Jesus Christ. I mean, at least something works. Jesus. SpaceX, just go to the home page. Watch. Velcro Dragon. That's what Dragon is currently. Okay. Go for launch is at 45 seconds. Okay. What? That must be a mistake. Okay, so I'm gonna do this is what I end up with. Okay. So that's what I got. Okay, I will not stay up for another hour. So, commentary is gonna be off for the next 1 hour. At least till it's close enough for me to survive. Enough. So, the commentary is gonna be out for me for the next 45 minutes with them while I watch my premium Crew-3 content on TV. So, yeah. See you later, alligators. See you later, spacemans. Team Space always rocks.
Final electronic go-no-go poll. Now, before we can start loading propellant on the Falcon 9, we have a couple of major tasks to perform with respect to Dragon. First, after the poll is complete, we're going to retract that crew access arm that you can see alongside Dragon from the...
John! Yes! John! I want you to hear me, guys! John! Yes! John! Woohoo! John Inspector! I love him! I love his beautiful, beautiful voice! John! Woohoo!
Looks good and ready to support an on-time launch in just over 64 minutes. So with everything looking good right now, the range is also ready to support from historic Launch Pad 39A, the worldwide network of ground stations and the tracking and data relay satellites are ready to support Dragon as it heads into orbit. Everything is looking good for that instantaneous launch window at 9:03:31 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is 2 hours, 3 minutes, 31 seconds Universal Time. As a reminder, once we begin loading propellant, there's no opportunity to change the T0. Timing for Dragon rendezvous with the International Space Station is very precise, down to the second, so we're going to get one chance at it today. But the good news, coming up just over 63 minutes and counting, we are go for launch, Jesse.
Great. Thank you, John I. It's always great to hear that we have everything go for our T0.
Recycling orbit tank isolation valves to equalize low flow pressure at this time. Additionally, you are go for section 6. When ready, report go for launch.
Endurance copies of recycling some pressurization valves, and we are go for section 6.
Awesome. Just hearing some comms from the teams. Today's launch marks the third time a rotational crew will fly on a commercial spacecraft, and each of our crew members brings a diverse set of experiences to today's flight. Rajachari is the commander of the Crew Dragon spacecraft and the Crew-3 mission. Chari is responsible for all phases of flight, from launch to re-entry. Once on board station, he'll serve as an Expedition 66 flight engineer. He was born in Milwaukee, but considers Cedar Falls, Iowa, his hometown. He is a colonel in the U.S. Air Force and joins the mission with extensive experience as a test pilot. Over his career, he has accumulated more than 2,500 hours of flight time. This will be the first space flight for Chari, who became a NASA astronaut in 2017. He is also a member of the Artemis team, so he is eligible for assignment to a future lunar mission.
And Tom Marshburn is the pilot of the Crew Dragon spacecraft and second in command for the mission, responsible for spacecraft systems and performance. Once aboard station, he will serve as an Expedition 66 flight engineer and is scheduled to assume command of the station for Expedition.
Launch 6.4, section 4.100.
Copy, Dragon. You are go for launch.
All right, and that call, Endurance, is a go for launch. Exciting news. Again, Tom Marshburn is a Statesville, North Carolina native who became an astronaut in 2004. Prior to serving in the astronaut corps, the medical doctor served as a flight surgeon at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston and later became medical operations lead for the International Space Station. The Crew-3 mission will be his third visit to the space station and his second long-duration mission. And the Crew Dragon will be the third spacecraft for Marshburn to fly in after the Space Shuttle and the Russian Soyuz. He previously served as a crew member of STS-127 in 2009 and Expedition 34 and 35, which concluded in 2013.
Kayla Barron is a mission specialist for Crew-3. As a mission specialist, she will work closely with the commander and pilot to monitor the spacecraft during the dynamic launch and re-entry phases of flight. Once aboard the station, she will become a flight engineer for Expedition 66. Barron was born in Pocatello, Idaho, but considers Richland, Washington her hometown. She earned a bachelor's degree in systems engineering from the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland in 2010, and a master's degree in nuclear engineering from the University of Cambridge in England in 2011 as a Gates Cambridge Scholar. Lieutenant Commander Barron earned her submarine warfare officer qualification and deployed 3 times while serving aboard the USS Maine. At the time of her selection as an astronaut candidate in 2017, she was serving as the flag aide to the superintendent of the U.S. Naval Academy.
And Matthias Maurer will also be a mission specialist for Crew-3, working with the commander and pilot to monitor the spacecraft during the dynamic launch and re-entry phases of flight. He will also become a long-duration crew member aboard the space station. Maurer comes from Sankt Wendel in the German state of Saarland. Before becoming an astronaut, Maurer held a number of engineering and research roles, both in a university setting and at ESA. In 2016, Maurer spent 16 days on an undersea mission as part of NASA's Extreme Environment Mission Operations, or NEMO, space analog. Like Chari and Barron, Maurer will be making his first trip to space with the Crew-3 mission.
Each of these 4 crew members will join Expedition 66 once they arrive at the International Space Station, with Russian cosmonaut Anton Shkaplerov as commander.
Yep, and it looks like we are just under 1 hour from liftoff now. And this day is a continuation of regular crew flights to the space station from U.S. soil. This will be the 4th flight Dragon. This will be the 4th flight of Dragon with NASA crew and its 3rd long-duration mission to the International Space Station.
And today, our crew is flying the newest Dragon in our fleet, and we'll be taking a ride on board the Falcon 9 that supported the CRS-22 mission back in June of this year. Now, it's been a great countdown so far. Weather is still looking good, so the excitement is continuing to pick up here as we get closer to that T0.
That's right. We started our coverage with Suit Up just over 3 hours ago. The SpaceX team helped the crew put on their suits and conduct initial checkouts before Crew Walkout. Crew Walkout was where Raja Chari, Tom Marshburn, Caleb Barron, and Matthias Maurer gave final goodbyes with friends and family gathered outside of the operations and checkout building before they began that roughly 20-minute ride to pad 39A.
And though it was just after sunset and already dark outside, we did still get some awesome views of those Teslas heading down the NASA Causeway before the crew arrived at the pad. And once they arrived, they all took a brief moment to enjoy the view of the vehicle that they will be taking flight on, and then headed up the fixed service structure to begin a process known as crew ingress, where the astronauts entered the vehicle, and the SpaceX team performed a series of checks to ensure that the suits, seats, and vehicle interactions were all functioning properly.
Then about 30 minutes ago, the team closed Dragon's hatch with the crew safely inside. So again, we're just under 1 hour to go until Dragon starts breathing fire. Things will pick up as we get close to the go, no-go pole to arm the launch escape system and begin propellant loading.
Now, the crew poll for readiness was completed at T-minus 60 minutes, and the Dragon poll for prop load is coming up here in about a minute at T-minus 55 minutes. Now, next up at T-minus 45 minutes after that will be an internal mission control Hawthorne poll, and then the launch director's poll for propellant loading. When we get to about T-minus 40 minutes, the crew access arm will retract, and the crew will get the call to close their visors and arm the launch escape system. Now, this is the automated system in place that can fire the 8 Super Draco thrusters on Dragon to quickly separate the crew from the rocket, either on the pad or during the flight on the ride uphill.
And then once we reach about T-minus 35 minutes, propellant loading for the Falcon 9 will begin. Throughout the countdown, we've been getting some pretty incredible views of the astronauts inside Dragon, making their final preparations, as well as some close-up views of those suits. The teams have often described the suits as an extension of the Dragon spacecraft, almost a mini spacecraft inside of a spacecraft. We're standing by now for that call for propellant loading.
Again, that should be coming up here at about T-minus 55 minutes. So we're just about roughly 40 seconds away from that.
The crew in position, ready to go. Taking a look at those monitors above them.
And from the view that you can see on your screen, we have Raja Chari, the commander of Crew-3, closest to the screen, with Tom Marshburn in the pilot seat next to him.
With everything still proceeding well, let's send it back to the team in Florida. Daryl, how's it going there?
It's going great out here, ladies, and we're here with NASA astronaut Shannon Walker. If you want to get a question in, hashtag #AskNASA on Twitter, and she will do her best to answer your question. And by the way, speaking of social, Kennedy is hosting a virtual NASA social on our Facebook page. People who have joined are posting messages, pictures, and videos with their fellow space fans. And we want to share now 4 video messages that came into our virtual social for Crew-3 that were posted by the last 4 crew members to fly on Dragon. That is the crew of Inspiration 4.
I want to wish the astronauts of Crew-3 all the best on their journey to the space station. It's going to be one heck of a ride. Falcon 9 and Dragon, as you guys know, is an incredible vehicle.
Hi everyone at Virtual NASA Social. I'm Dr. Cyan Proctor. I am the mission pilot from Inspiration 4, and I just want to wish Crew-3 an awesome liftoff as they head to the International Space Station.
Hi Raja, Tom, Matthias, Kayla, Hank's here just to wish you well on your mission into space. I couldn't be more excited for you for the journey you're about to go through. Getting into that Falcon rocket with your suits on, to have your name on it, is a feeling like no other.
Crew-3, I just want to say I'm so excited for all of you. I know that rush of emotion that you're going to feel with your spacesuit on, strapped into the capsule, and you're about to have the best ride of your life. Just laugh the whole way up there like we did.
Just want to wish you all the best, and look forward to exchanging some stories a little bit down the road. Take care. Godspeed, Crew-3.
I love Haley Arsenault saying that she laughed the whole way up.
I can definitely relate to that.
Can you really?
Yes.
Well, what was so funny?
It's an exciting ride. You're just happy.
You're
You
just
gotta
so
laugh.
thrilled.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And whenever she says anything, it always brings a smile to my face. She has such great energy. Well, throughout the program, we've been answering your Ask NASA questions from social media. We have time now for a few more before Falcon 9 fueling begins, and so we'll pop it up on the screen. And Shannon, you've been answering them all show long. We appreciate that. So the question we have up now is, what are your tips for me to go to space? I'm a high school freshman from Poland, dreaming of going to space.
Yeah, so the first thing, the most important thing, is to do well in school. We need people who are very accomplished and have lots of different skills, and it all starts with a good education. Now, being from Poland, you're going to have to apply to the European Space Agency to be part of their astronaut program, and hopefully they will have another selection one of these days. But really, do well in school, and then go pursue a field of work that really interests you. What you want to do is do something you're very passionate about, and that really, when you're passionate about something, you're going to do well at it, and it's going to stand out, and people are going to take notice. And so, yeah.
It doesn't necessarily have to be a specific, STEM is good, right?
Right.
But there have been people who have not gone into STEM and become astronauts.
Every astronaut that we have taken on the NASA side has got a STEM background.
Oh, they do, and so
Yes.
that is a requirement.
That is a requirement right now. Now, of course, we're starting to fly more people, and there are more opportunities to get to space, so it may not be a requirement in the future, but right now, at least on the NASA side, you need a STEM background.
A STEM background and study hard and get some good grades.
Yes.
Our next question, does it get very hot wearing the spacesuits, or is the material breathable?
Yes, no, the material is absolutely not breathable because you need those spacesuits to hold pressure should something go wrong in the capsule. So you need it to completely contain that atmosphere around you. So they can get a little hot, but the entire time you're in the suit, they're flowing air through it to keep you cool.
You've got an air conditioning system for the suit.
Yes.
Blowing that air around.
Yes, exactly. You need the air to be blown around because you really don't want to end up with a carbon dioxide bubble right in front of your face.
All right. Thank you so much, Shannon, for answering those questions. And keep the questions coming. We appreciate them at #AskNASA. Now we'll send it over to Marie, who is standing by with the Deputy Director of the Kennedy Space Center. Marie?
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here with you, Marie.
And I wanted to ask you about a special connection that you have to Kayla and Raja, part of the Turtle class of astronauts in 2017. You were actually on their selection board. Tell me about that.
Oh, I sure was. In the class of 2017, we had the most applicants ever in the history of NASA, 18,353. And when it was all said and done, we picked 12. Of course, Raja and Kayla were part of that class. So to see them when they first walked in for their very first NASA interview and to know now they're on board the Dragon on top of the Falcon 9 rocket, it's just amazing. About every week, you know, and it is just humongous to see that rocket and to know that that rocket will carry our astronauts to the moon and beyond, hopefully to Mars. So right now we're undergoing something we call IVT, Interface Verification Test. We'll do that for a couple more days, and then we're getting prepared to roll it out for a wet dress rehearsal. So hopefully that'll happen at the end of this year, early next year. We'll roll it out.
47, oh God. 47 minutes and counting until the liftoff of Crew-3. It's truly amazing. I was just watching the Starship launches. How inspirational they were. It was just unbelievable. So, my computer's starting to die, but, you know, who cares? So, I will go watch Crew-3 on my TV, and I'll be back in a few minutes. Like, wait. When I reach 45 minutes, I really need to hear him. I need to hear him. And when you put up this. Oh God, I am so sorry for not being live for too long. I'll be out.
Crew-3, I noticed the astronauts have a little mirror on their suits on their left arm. What are they for?
Yes, good eye to notice that.
Good eye.
Good eye. Yes, that mirror is actually will let you inspect your spacesuit to make sure everything is fine. So once you're in the spacecraft by yourself, if you open your visor and you need to shut it, you want to make sure, in my case, that your hair is not crossing the boundary and would interrupt the seal that is necessary to keep that pressure on the inside. So they use that to make sure their spacesuit is in perfect condition.
How about that? I hadn't even noticed it. It is wonderful when we get these questions from the viewers and the people who are watching, because they're looking so closely.
They are looking closely, and it's great that people are picking up those details.
Well, let's take another one then, since we've got some great questions coming in. Can you keep your spacesuit after the mission?
Oh man, I wish I could keep my spacesuit. I don't know where I would put it, but no, unfortunately we are not allowed to keep our spacesuits.
You couldn't stuff it and put it in the foyer?
I suppose I could. That would be a bit pretentious, don't you think?
But you know what's interesting is if you don't keep it, it is made exactly to your specifications. So
what do we do with it? So, yeah, actually, after a flight, the spacesuits go into rotation for training. And so, at this moment, Samantha Cristoforetti, who is about my size, is using my spacesuit for her training while her spacesuit is being built.
Ah, okay. So they really are used again, but not for spaceflight. They go into a life of training.
That's correct.
Great questions, folks. We really appreciate these. These are
Falcon
some good ones. And Shannon.
In approximately 25 seconds, expect loud venting.
So we're getting a call out as we prepare for propellant loading. And you see the crew there, Crew-3.
And they have their visors closed, so they are ready. They have them closed before the launch escape system is activated in case, activated in case it needs to be put into action. They will be safe in their suits.
Another safety measure as we are here at the Kennedy Space Center taking another question from social media. Shannon, what was it like to feel the weightlessness of space for the first time?
Oh, that is such an interesting feeling when that happens. Of course, I felt it for the first time on the Soyuz spacecraft. When we got into space and the engines cut off, to me it felt like we were sort of tipping forward. I felt like I was floating forward in my harness that was holding me down.
Huh.
Don't know why. I don't think we were, but that's what it felt like.
Yeah. And not too long after you get up into space, don't you get ready to sleep in anticipation for getting to the space station?
It really depends on your profile. So what the Crew Dragon will do is what we did on our flight up, which also had a 22-hour-ish rendezvous. They will go through systems checks, make sure everything is working on the Dragon, and then they will have a sleep period before they do the final rendezvous.
And I want to ask a follow-up on this question.
Okay.
What's it like to sleep in space? Like, what happens? Is does your head what does your head do, and how do you get comfortable with not being against anything?
It is interesting to sleep in space. It is actually pretty comfortable to sleep in space, but it does take a little bit getting used to. I will tell you, the first time I was up there, for about the first month, I would wake up in the middle of the night and feel like I needed to turn over. But of course, that's not going to do you any good in space. So that's just part of adjusting to learning how to sleep in space.
There's certainly no pressure points, are there?
There are no pressure points. You're just tucked into your sleeping bag.
Are you restrained?
You have a sleeping bag on the space station. You have a sleeping bag that's inside your crew quarters, and that sleeping bag is attached to the wall. So you sort of float inside your sleeping bag, which is attached to a wall.
All right. Great job, Shannon. Thank you for all the answers to the questions there. And thank you, folks, for sending them in. They were wonderful. We enjoyed them. And Shannon did a great job of answering them. Just a few seconds away from prop load.
Propellant load has started.
And there we heard the call out.
Yes.
This rocket is being loaded with propellant.
Yes. Obviously another major milestone, and that is something that is very obvious to the crew. They can feel it loading into the tanks. It starts low down at the bottom of the rocket, but as the propellant gets, the tanks get more full, it gets more vibrations and louder as it gets closer to the crew.
Yeah, you can hear that inside the capsule, right?
Definitely hear it. You know something big's getting ready to happen.
Absolutely. Well, we are T-minus 34 minutes and counting away from the launch of Crew Dragon's third flight with astronauts and the second for 2021. Today begins the next 6-month rotation mission to the International Space Station. The launch escape system is armed, as we just heard, which happens just before we have started loading propellant onto Falcon 9. That propellant is now flowing into Dragon. The Dragon capsule was loaded with its propellants about a week and a half ago, just a few miles down the road at what we call Dragonland. And in order to fly, Dragon needs a fuel and an oxidizer. So for the fuel, we use monomethyl hydrazine, or MMH, and nitrogen tetroxide, or NTO, for the oxidizer. Together, these propellants feed the Draco engines that must maneuver Dragon on orbit, as well as the 8 Super Draco engines that would power the launch escape system in an abort scenario. And again, that fueling, it is flowing. And that means the 8 Super Draco engines inside Crew Dragon are ready. If needed, they can launch the capsule away from the Falcon 9 rocket in an instant, should there be any kind of emergency associated with the rocket or the pad. And the NASA and SpaceX teams have trained extensively for exactly that type of contingency. So we'll send it over for now to SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne for an operations update with John I.
We're counting down those final minutes. Everything's still looking good for Falcon 9 and Dragon for an on-time launch just over 32 minutes from now. Falcon 9 did begin propellant load on time at T-minus 35 minutes. You can see Falcon 9 on the pad, the first and second stages. They're being loaded with 2 liquid propellants. One is a fuel loaded into a tank at the bottom of the stage. The other is an oxidizer that loads into the tank at the top of each stage. The fuel that we're using to power the Merlin engines is a refined kerosene, referred to as RP1. And the oxidizer loaded on each stage is densified liquid oxygen, or LOX. Now, densified is the term that we use to describe that we keep it much colder than typical for launch vehicles. And that allows it to take up less volume, and therefore we can put more liquid oxygen onto the first and second stages. Now, to ignite the fuel and oxidizer in the Merlin rocket engine, we use that favorite ignition fluid called T-Tub. Now, when T-Tub comes into contact with oxygen, it'll burn, and that gives off a green-colored flame. Once we've got the flame going, we add the kerosene fuel into the Merlin engine chambers, and the engine ramps up to full power. You probably won't be able to see the green flash at ignition of the 9 Merlin engines on the first stage, but you may see it on the second stage engine when it ignites following stage separation about 2 minutes and 48 seconds into flight. We're now beginning to top off helium into pressure vessels on both stages. We've been quiet for most of the countdown, but now we're going to squeeze that last little bit in, make sure that the tanks are fully up on the pressure vessels. We'll use that gas to pressurize the propellant tanks in flight. The Merlin turbopumps will be pulling propellant out of the stage, and we need to take up or make up that empty space with hot helium. Now, at the very top of the stack is the Dragon spacecraft. The astronauts are monitoring their systems while propellant is loaded into the Falcon 9. We heard them talking about the noises of propellant loading.
Stage 1 cryo-helium
And in this case, the crew training in the simulator also includes playback of sounds that have been recorded in the Dragon capsule during recent flights. Good news on the range, they are ready to support. They've been doing the balloon launches. They've been making sure that the air and sea space is clear, and they are go to support launch. And the good news on the weather front, a little while back, the launch weather officer came and reduced the probability of violation from 30 to 20%. The biggest thing that we're going to be looking for is precipitation, and that's less than 10%. The wind speeds are low, probably about 5 miles per hour or less. So everything is actually looking good. Now, as a reminder, we do have an instantaneous launch time for tonight's countdown. So from this point on, if we hear hold, hold, hold for any reason, we'll have to stand down and target our backup launch opportunity tomorrow night, which is about just under 24 hours from tonight's planned launch. But with that, everything's looking good, and we're going to turn it over to Jesse and Courtney for an overview of what comes after liftoff.
Great, thank you, John I. We love good news. For Crew-3, the astronauts' flight to station will take about 22 hours.
As we await T-0 in just about 28 minutes, the ground operations teams are doing a series of systems checks to make sure both Dragon and Falcon 9 are ready for launch. You're looking at a live view of our teams at the Cape as they prepare for liftoff. As we wait for the launch clock to hit 0, we wanted to give you an overview of what the ascent portion of the mission will look like.
Once we hit T0 and a successful launch occurs, we will watch Falcon 9 and Dragon lift off from the historic launch pad 39A and make their ascent.
At about 50 seconds into flight, Falcon 9's engines will throttle down to help pass through the period of maximum dynamic pressure on the rocket, or what we typically refer to as max Q. It's worth noting that once we hit max Q, the vehicle will be going supersonic.
Now, once we are through the period of maximum dynamic pressure, we can throttle up our 9 Merlin engines again. Now, from there, at about 2.5 minutes into flight, we have a series of 3 events that will happen in rapid succession.
First is MECO, or main engine cutoff. This is where all 9 Merlin 1D engines shut off in preparation for stage separation, which is our second event. This is where the first stage detaches from the second stage, with the first stage making its way back to the Earth for landing as the second stage continues on its journey with the third event. SES-1, or second stage engine start number 1, is where the MVAC engine lights up and propels the second stage along with our Crew-3 astronauts into orbit.
As Stage 2 heads towards its targeted drop-off orbit, Stage 1 will execute 2 burns in order to make its way back to Earth. The first is the entry burn, where 3 of the 9 M1D engines will reignite and then shut down. Now, this helps to slow the stage down in preparation for entry back into the Earth's atmosphere.
While the first stage is heading back to Earth, the second stage will cut off its 1 Merlin engine that was ignited right after stage separation. Once that happens, we will wait for confirmation of a good orbital insertion.
About 90 seconds after Dragon gets into orbit, Falcon 9 will land back on Earth. The landing burn is just a single engine burn, but it's powerful enough to bring the vehicle's speed down rapidly in order to land on the drone ship at about 9.5 minutes into the mission.
And while Falcon 9 first stage is landing, Dragon is preparing to separate from the second stage. At about 3 minutes after the second stage gets into orbit, we should have a great view of Dragon with its 4-person crew drifting away from the second stage. Once Dragon is a short distance away, it will begin checking out its Draco maneuvering thrusters to make sure Dragon continues to increase separation distance from the second stage. It's worth noting that these are not the Super Draco engines that would be used during an abort scenario.
About 40 seconds after separation, Dragon's nose cone deploy sequence will begin. It will take roughly 4 minutes for the nose cone hooks to unlatch and open, exposing its guidance navigation controls, or what we call GNC, that will help the Dragon autonomously fly to the space station.
And lastly, once the nose cone is deployed, the remaining Draco thrusters on the forward bulkhead will be checked. From there, over the next 22 hours, Dragon will be in its rendezvous and approach phases, undergoing a number of phasing burns as it makes its way to the International Space Station. All that will be coming up soon, but for now, let's check back in with Sandra in Mission Control Houston. Sandra.
Thanks, Courtney. The space station team here in Houston is focused, and the critical systems on the station continue to function normally. The teams have verified the command path from the ground up through our constellation of communication satellites to the space station. Everything is nominal, and the station will be ready to receive Dragon tomorrow. Once the crew arrives at station, they'll join Expedition 66. While on board, their official designation will be flight engineers for most of their expedition. At the back end of their journey, Tom Marshburn will assume command of the station from current space station commander Anton Shkaplerov. Flight Director Rebecca Wingfield is on console now, leading flight controllers in Houston for launch, and will also lead teams for docking tomorrow. A reminder that a launch today will take about 22 hours to get to station, with the docking to the Node 2 forward port scheduled tomorrow, November 11th at 6 p.m. Central Time. Once Dragon is fully docked to the station, the team here in Houston will assist the Dragon and space station astronauts with leak checks as they work to open hatches on both Dragon and inside the station's pressurized mating adapter. We expect hatch open to take place approximately 2 hours after docking. That's it for us here in Mission Control Houston. I'll send it back over to the team in Florida. Daryl?
All right, thanks, Sandra. We are back here at the Kennedy Space Center, circling about that mock Dragon behind us.
Yes, pretty. It's a pretty capsule.
This lady right here flew on one, Crew-1, not too long ago, and had an incredible experience, 6 months up on the International Space Station.
Yes, 6 months. It's hard to believe that I've been home 6 months already, but
here you are, ready to watch a launch.
Watching the next one go.
T-minus 23 minutes and counting, and if you're just joining us, we are ready for the third astronaut rotational flight and mission to the International Space Station under NASA's Commercial Crew Program. Commander Raja Chari, pilot Tom Marshburn, and mission specialist Kayla Barron. There you see them. They are strapped in along with Matthias Maurer, ready to fly inside Crew Dragon Endurance. We can see them live as well as outside. The Falcon 9 rocket fueling operation is well underway. The launch escape system is armed, and that means Crew Dragon is prepared to launch itself away from the Falcon 9 rocket in the case of an emergency on the pad or after liftoff. So far, operations look and sound as expected, and we are just counting down to that liftoff at 9:03 p.m. Eastern Time. You can see the steam as it comes off, the condensation as it comes off the rocket. I've noted in past launches that as it fills with fuel, the entire first stage begins to let off, and it kind of gives you a marker of exactly where in the rocket they are. It's almost like a little fuel gauge.
Exactly. Yep, because the fuel and oxidizer are cryogenic, they are extremely cold, and so you just see them condensing the air around it. And of course in Florida we've got lots of moisture in our air to condense.
We sure do. There's some onshore flow, a weather pattern that is bringing moist air off the Atlantic Ocean, and so with this lit up, we should see a lot of this condensation coming off this particular rocket. The mission is the continuation of rotational crew flights to the International Space Station from U.S. soil on private rockets and spacecraft. This would not be possible without the success of NASA SpaceX Demo 2 test flight last year and the safe delivery of Crew-1 astronauts, including my co-host Shannon Walker, to the space station last fall for a long-duration mission. Crew-1 is back home, of course, and we have one of the mission specialists with us right here today. As you're counting down, we're only 21 minutes out from launch, Shannon. What is going through your head in this moment?
Boy, this is really, things get even more intense and more exciting. You can feel the rocket being fueled. You know you don't have too much longer, so you're really thinking about what you're going to need to do as soon as those engines light.
T-minus 21 minutes and counting. The excitement levels rising for the crew inside. Crew Dragon Commander Raja Chari, he'll be making his first trip to space. And as commander, he is responsible for all phases of flight, from launch to re-entry. Chari is a colonel in the U.S. Air Force. He holds degrees in astronautical engineering and aeronautics. Chari is also a combat veteran, having flown F-15E aircraft during Operation Iraqi Freedom and deployments in the Korean Peninsula. As a test pilot, he has accumulated more than 2,500 hours of flight time in various military aircraft. His pilot is Tom Marshburn, sitting right to his right. You see Chari there on the left. Marshburn is suiting up for his third space flight. As pilot, he is responsible for spacecraft systems and performance. He previously flew on the Space Shuttle Endeavour and STS-127 and on the Russian Soyuz.
Load complete.
In Expedition 3435, while helping to assemble the International Space Station on STS-127. In that flight, Marshburn performed 3 spacewalks totaling almost 19 hours. It was just go, go, go. A North Carolina native holds degrees in physics and medicine. In fact, he was an emergency medicine doctor.
Yes, he was.
Mission specialist Kayla Barron, she's about to make her first trip to space. In this role, she will work closely with the commander and pilot to monitor the spacecraft during the dynamic phases of flight. The Washington State native has degrees in nuclear engineering and systems engineering. As a submarine warfare officer, she was a member of the first class of women commissioned into the submarine community, and she deployed 3 times while serving aboard the USS Maine. And lastly, on the end there in this shot is mission specialist Matthias Maurer. He will be making his debut spaceflight. He will be the second European astronaut to fly on Crew Dragon. Maurer is from Sankt Wendel, Germany, and is a doctor of materials science and engineering. He is the inventor of more than 10 patent applications, and he joined the European Astronaut Corps in 2015. Maurer has spent 16 days in underwater training during a NASA Extreme Environment Mission Operations Challenge, and he's trained in sea survival training off the coast of China. And an interesting note about Maurer, he will become the 600th person in space. 600.
Yes, even though all 4 crew members will be traveling to space at the same time, we have to assign numbers, and he is number 600.
He's landed on that big milestone. Chari gets 599. Barron is 601. What was Shannon Walker?
You know, I believe I was number 518, but don't quote me. I could be wrong, but it's in the early 500s.
We'll take a look at the NASA history books and
yes,
we'll figure it out. Each of these 4 crew members will join Expedition 66 once they arrive at the International Space Station, where Anton Shkaplerov is currently commander of the space station. You spent some time as the commander?
I spent a very brief amount of time as commander. Right at the end of our crew's time up there for about 2 weeks, I was commander after the Soyuz crew left.
All right. It was short?
Sweet.
But you were in charge.
I was in charge.
Sweet. All right, let's go over to OSB2 and check in with Marie Lewis. Marie?
All right, thank you, Daryl. I am here with NASA Administrator Bill Nelson. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
What a pleasure. What a great evening. Looks like the rain has given us a break.
Yeah, it's clearing up. We've got a great view of the pad, and this must bring back quite a few memories from you. You launched from Pad 39A some years ago, and this is your first crew launch here as the NASA Administrator. What has this experience been like for you so far?
Well, just to have an opportunity to try to offer some leadership to this fantastic organization where the impossible is routine, and it's just such a tremendous organization. You know, it's been voted the best place to work in the federal government for the last 9 years straight.
Stage 2
so
LOX load has
is it
begun.
any wonder that everybody's excited all the time? And here's another reason what we're going to do tonight.
Absolutely. And you launched on the space shuttle 61C years ago. How did that experience change you, and how do you think it's going to change the astronauts that are going to space for the first time tonight?
It happens to every space flyer when you look back at Earth from the position of Earth orbit and you see this beautiful creation, our home, the planet, suspended in the middle of nothing. It makes you want to be a better steward of our planet. It's extraordinary. As you orbit the Earth every 90 minutes,
Okay,
and then, of course,
if I can't stream it now, it's too late. So I'm sorry. I some crew, I gotta sleep now. So bye, and as always, space and peace out. Have a good rest of your day. And I will not be live streaming Lover First Insight. Thank you for watching. See you later.